Peter, congratulations on being selected for the 2020 RIFM Board of Directors Excellence in Fragrance Science Award winner. I've worked with you since my arrival at RIFM in the 1980s. Can you tell us how you arrived at working at Firmenich?
Thanks very much, Anne-Marie. First of all, I should say that I'm highly honoured and I must say particularly surprised to have been chosen for this award. To answer your question, I joined Firmenich in 1980. I was at the University of Geneva, just across the river from Firmenich, and I saw that there was a vacancy for a product safety manager. There would just be me and one assistant. And at that time, I couldn't imagine what safety issues there could possibly be with fragrances. So the job looked like it would be a nice sleepy sinecure. But time proved me wrong. 30 years later, we were over 100 at Firmenich doing product safety, and even then we were struggling to keep up with all the different issues and regulatory challenges. It goes without saying that in this aggressive environment, we as an industry would be much, much worse off if we didn't have RIFM as a repository of knowledge and as a centre of independent expertise. And I'd like to add that it's been a pleasure to have worked with you, Anne-Marie, all this time. Since your arrival at RIFM, I and many others have been benefiting from your dedication and incredibly extensive knowledge. In fact, we have a common link. At first, I was reporting to Firmenich's chief medical advisor, Professor Maurice Cook, who was associated then with the RIFM expert panel, and he was also your PhD supervisor. He brought a lot of knowledge and wisdom and was largely responsible for aligning IFRA with the judgments of the RIFM experts at that time.
Peter, what was it about the fragrance industry that captured your interest?
Well, it was partly the mystique associated with the perception of odor, and also the complexity with thousands of chemically defined fragrance materials and a very large variety of different botanical preparations. It's still intriguing to me to see just how many different sensory effects can be made from these quite simple and apparently innocuous substances. In many cases, these are substances made by nature just for attracting, pollinating insects. But most importantly, it was the injustice that captured my attention, the vulnerability of the fragrance industry to what I saw as largely unjustified criticism. It is part of the chemical industry, of course, and everyone knows that chemicals are bad, even if Mother Nature is by far the biggest manufacturer of chemicals. Fragrance bring pleasure in many ways, but to many critics, this pleasure is superfluous. To them, fragrances bring no tangible benefits, unlike, for instance, pharmaceuticals, and therefore even the immeasurably small risk from these unnecessary chemicals is intolerable. And worse still, for some ideologues, the fragrance industry makes profits.
So Peter, I know you've seen many changes in the fragrance industry. What would you think are the most significant changes?
Well, perhaps the biggest change has been the intrusion of regulations. Associated with this is the activity of various pressure groups and non-governmental organizations, and also, I think, significantly, the increased susceptibility of the public.
Peter, you've made so many contributions to the fragrance industry. What do you think is the most meaningful one?
Well, my contributions have not really been particularly striking, but most meaningful to me, I think, that I put down the first draft of the latest criteria document when it became evident that we needed to address in a specific way material by material, a number of endpoints such as reproductive and developmental toxicity and local respiratory effects, as well as other adverse effects. And that was in 2011. Many others contributed to this document that was finally published in 2015.
You've also made many contributions in the skin sensitization area. What did you find the most challenging in this area?
Perhaps the most challenging task has been to convince the dermatologists that we are setting about controlling this problem in a scientific way, particularly now with the quantitative risk assessment procedure, QRA, and the resulting quantitative limitations imposed by IFRA. Dermatologists still use patch testing, which is a 120-year-old technique. This does indeed detect allergens that may be lurking below the surface. It is quite reliable at doing this, I think, but how far below the surface are all these allergens that come out positive in this test really relevant for patients, and are they indicative of any risk to consumers? Many will, I think, probably remain lurking below the surface and never manifest themselves adversely during a lifetime. For a number of years, I collaborated on a personal basis with Professor Howard Maybach, a highly esteemed expert in this field, and he has published a number of scientific publications calling for more circumspection by dermatologists in this regard. I just hope that his message will be heeded. The good news, I guess, is that over the years, RIFM has carried out an enormous number of sensitization tests. As a result, the outcome of most of the remaining untested fragrance materials can be deduced by reading across the results of tests already run on closely related substances. Looking back at the 500 untested fragrance ingredients examined in my last years on the RIFM skin sensitization core team, I note that only 3% have been recommended for further testing, while the situation of 77% can be resolved by read across, and the remaining 20% by their extremely low exposure levels. So a lot has been achieved here already.
What do you see as the biggest, the most immediate challenges and opportunities that we face for the fragrance safety horizon?
Well, I'm not too good at predicting, but for me, one particular challenge is and will continue to result from pressure to stop tests on animals. Now, I'm not defending these tests, but there is a problem of timing. They are being replaced by in vitro and in silico methods, but often these new methods have not been adequately validated or measured against the now disfavored animal tests, and probably never will. Hence, we have situations like we see with endocrine disruptors, where various pressure groups are justifying their criticisms by using the results of these new test methods in the absence of any yardstick as to their significance. I fear that we may expect the same situation for other adverse effects, such as those with a good public scare value, like neurological effects, immunotoxicity, respiratory sensitization, asthma, and many others. Well, I may have sounded pessimistic up till now, but in fact I feel that RIFM presents the great opportunity for our industry. It draws its expertise, of course, from the expert panel for fragrance safety, but also from its own staff, as you'll hear today, and from volunteers from industry. Taken together, I think this is a formidable weapon, a defense weapon against the arguments of activists and crusading politicians. And also, we have the pleasurable benefits that fragrances provide. Fragrances are not unnecessary chemicals. and a world without fragrances would, I believe, be a depressing place. I certainly don't believe that we are slowly poisoning consumers or the environment, and I remain confident that being right and having the right people to demonstrate this will in the end win out. I'm sure that future recipients of this award will, unlike me, be able to say that they have indeed successfully demonstrated to all that we have been right all along. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. As always, you're too modest. It's been a pleasure working with you all these years. And again, I'd like to congratulate you on being selected this year's RIFM Board of Directors Excellence in Fragrance Science Award winner. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.